Danger, Will Robinson! Danger! No, Will Robinson! Danger!
All's not as it seems aboard the Jupiter 2. You might think that the Robinson family is the most perfect space family one has ever seen. But what people don't realize is that many of the cast members were actually last-minute picks, and some of the guest characters were actually the first people considered for the roles. From the true history of the cast ensemble to Dr. Smith's stellar performance, here's the full story about Lost in Space. Make sure to stick to the end of the video for the bonus fact as well. Number 10. The cast. The show establishes the main cast at the very intro of the show itself. We see the captain, John Robinson, played by Guy Williams, his wife, Maureen Robinson, played by June Lockhart, the pilot of the Jupiter 2 craft, Major Don West, played by Mark Goddard, and the daughters and son of the Robinsons, Judy, Penny, and Will, played by Marta Kristen, Angela Cartwright, and Bill Mumy, respectively. Of course, we can't forget about the memorable robot, played by Bob May and voiced by Dick Tufeld. This star-studded cast was personally picked by Irwin Allen, the creator of the show, and their chemistry on screen was absolutely electric and had everyone hooked onto their TV screens. Number 9. Adaptation of an adaptation. Well, would it surprise you to know that Lost in Space is actually not an original story, but rather just an adaptation of a story from nearly 150 years before the show? Well, now you do. Irwin Allen, the producer of the show, pitched the idea in 1965 after reading the 1962 comic series, Space Family Robinsons. But the thing is, this comic was actually an adaptation itself. The 1962 comic actually borrowed the idea of a family exploring a frontier from an 1812 novel called The Swiss Family Robinson. While the original novel dealt with a family getting stranded on an island, our show dealt with the family getting stranded in space. Number 8. Lost in continuity. Although Lost in Space is a masterpiece in direction and writing, there is one big glaring mistake in the pilot of the show that nearly everyone who was involved in the show missed. It wouldn't be until years later, while watching rewatches of the show, that fans would spot this mistake. What's the big issue, you ask? In the show, we see the Jupiter 2 launch on October the 16th, 1997. But in the next episode, Will Robinson's journal shows us that 5 days had passed since they launched, although they keep stating that only 24 hours have passed. Seems like the continuity supervisor was on strike when they wrote the episode. Number 7. From Sea to Space. Irwin Allen, the producer of Lost in Space, was tied up working on some other great shows at the time, like Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. But viewers of both shows may have realized some eerie similarities between the two shows. Well, it's because both shows actually borrowed from each other and even used to exchange several props. For example, a sea monster in Voyage would often be given a paint job and reintroduced in Lost in Space as a space monster. Many of the props and costumes often found new life across Irwin's shows, and he made it a point to reuse props. Number 6. Star Trek versus Lost in Space. The Star Trek versus Lost in Space debate is one that has been going on for generations at this point. And although Star Trek was a much bigger commercial hit than Lost in Space, dedicated fans of the show remain adamant that the Robinsons are better than Kirk and Spock any day. But CBS, the channel that finally decided on airing Lost in Space, sure regrets standing by that decision because they had the opportunity to air Star Trek and passed on it for Lost in Space. But perhaps it was for the best because if the distribution channels were switched, perhaps neither of the shows would have become as big as they did. If you've made it this far, adventurer, make sure to stick to the end for the amazing bonus fact revealing a fact no one has heard before. Number 5. Defected to the dark side. Well, we aren't talking about Star Wars here by any measure, as that franchise only came into existence nearly 12 years after Lost in Space aired. What we are talking about is the fact that Bill Mumy, the person who played Will Robinson, ended up working for Star Trek later on in his life. As we know, Star Trek and Lost in Space are sworn enemies. but Mumy always had a deep admiration for William Shatner and the Star Trek franchise. Years later, he would get the chance to play a character on an episode of Star Trek, Deep Space Nine. Mumy is the only cast member of either show to have played a role in both franchises. Number 4. Mumy and Cartwright. Billy Mumy and Angela Cartwright played the roles of the siblings Will and Penny Robinson on the set of Lost in Space, but Bill had fallen hard for Cartwright while acting on set. Mumy was apparently instantly enraptured with Angela on seeing her. Being his first crush, he developed a deep love for her, but it would only be 2 years later, when Bill turned 14, that he would ask Angela out, and she accepted. But sadly enough, even though the two ended up getting engaged, life would take them down different paths, and the two would end their engagement. Number 3. Replicating success. While Irwin Allen, the creator of the show, intended it to be a much more dark and gritty take on space, the production board eventually decided to make the show more family-oriented. But the show did not remain the same. It kept undergoing transformations. But the most important difference was the loss of the seriousness with each season. By the final season, show was much more comedic and much less serious than what it once was. Jonathan the Harris was apparently behind the rapidly increasing campiness of the show, and it seemed to work as well as Adam West's campy take on Batman set the tone for the decade. Number 2. Williams' disappointment. Guy Williams was signed onto the show for his acting experience and his phenomenal performance as the masked vigilante Zorro. Williams would sign on to the show as he was promised a central role, but that promise would soon fade. As Dr. Smith arrived on screen, Jonathan Harris, the person who played Dr. Smith, gave such a phenomenal performance that soon he was the one who set the pacing for the show, and with each passing episode, the evil doctor. Smith became the center of attention while Robinson got sidelined. Williams would eventually retire and go to Argentina, where he was celebrated for his previous role as Zorro. Number 1. Pricey. The pilot for the show alone was estimated to have cost the production crew nearly $600,000. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $4.5 million today. Spending such a huge amount of money on a TV show was unheard of at the time, but Lost in Space was just getting started. The average budget for each episode was around $130,000, making it the most expensive production of its era. And if you thought Irwin Allen was still being stingy with the show, wait until you hear how much the iconic Jupiter 2 spaceship cost to make. Reports say it cost the production crew a staggering $350,000, which is nearly $2.5 million in today's money. Bonus fact: Harris was temporary. Dr. Smith was never actually meant to be a permanent character in the show. He was just supposed to be a stand-in villain for the first couple of episodes till they had ideas for new villains. But Harris's performance was so legendary that the creators decided to make him a permanent addition. If you like this video, make sure to check out the links in the description for more stories on beloved shows like Lost in Space. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell as well. Make sure to leave a comment as well, telling us which secret was your favorite.